Good evening, welcome to 45South tonight. My name's Kelly Milmine and I'll be your host for this evening. Tonight's news brought to you by Ellen McClay, Ray White Real Estate. Contact Ellen for all your real estate needs, 021 366 209. And did you know you can get 10% discount if you're a gold card holder? Tonight's news brought to you from the Oamaru Mail. Train trip to Herbert well received. A fantastic walk-up crowd on Sunday has left Oamaru Steam and Rail General Manager Harry Andrew a very happy man. The Tairi train was in town on Sunday and brought with it 394 passengers. While in town, Mr Andrew borrowed the train for a fundraiser. He used the train to take families on a trip to Herbert to celebrate Father's Day. And up until Sunday, his response for the train ride had been slow. But Oamaru residents came out and supported his fundraiser. Originally, he was after 300 people to make the fundraiser viable, but he decided that 250 passengers on the trip to Herbert would be more realistic. I was totally blown away. I had hoped for around 250, with ticket sales being slow, but like Oamaru usually is, families left purchasing tickets to the last minute. The turnout was fantastic. I had 336 people on board, so I'm just stoked, Mr Andrews said. Mr Andrew was using the Tairi train to help restore the 1921 Fowler locomotive, which was used as play equipment in the Oamaru Public Gardens. He is confident he made between $4,000 and $5,000 from the train ride. The success of the Sunday's train ride has Mr Andrew considering more train rides in the future. They require more than $100,000 for the restoration of the train, with a new boiler set to cost between $65,000 and $75,000. Flooding can't be ignored any longer. Small steps have been made towards rectifying the problem of road closures due to flooding in the Totra area since resident Jock Webster organised a petition from those affected and presented it to the Waitaki District Council. Mr Webster said the worst affected roads had been Springfield, Fortification and Gees roads, which had been flooded to varying degrees since May last year. In the interim, $5,000 has been granted from the council and Mr Webster is pumping water from Springfield Road Pond via the Mitchell and Webster irrigation line into the Waireka Creek. He said in a statement presented to the WDC Assets Committee meeting last week that siphoning had proved difficult because of airlocks. Drains put in by earlier residents, which used to carry the water out to sea, were blocked, he said, and the water levels were at a new high. Assets Committee Chairman Bill Kingan said he visited the sites yesterday and was in the process of organising a meeting with the Otago Regional Council. The pumping option was a short-term solution, he said, while drainage options were investigated within the Regional Council. Mr Kingan advised the Assets Committee last week that it was likely existing drains would now be damaged and that if anything was done it would need to be new. Mr Webster believes a staged drainage system needs to be planned and installed, which would benefit residents, council and the North Otago economy. After the break, I'll be back with the weather and tonight's programs. Welcome back, and now for the weather. Today, Wednesday, the 10th of September, we had by 1 p.m. a temperature of 11 degrees Celsius, and our overnight low tonight is expected to drop down to 5 degrees. Tomorrow, Thursday, the high is expected to be 16 degrees and an overnight low of 6. Forecast for tomorrow, we're looking at fine with a northerly breeze. Sunrise 6:46 a.m, sunset 6:20 p.m. Tides for Thursday, we have a high tide at 4:47 a.m. and 5:15 p.m. Low tides 10:59 a.m. and 11:28 p.m. And for our programs tonight, first up we have Meet the Candidates Part 2, and our second program is going to be Jeff Omnett talking about bonsai. Third program, Tongan Language Week, choirs at the library. Now over to our first program, Meet the Candidates Part 2.
I see that we have some Kevins now with us, so we have 2 secondary schools. I'll ask Waitaki to put their question, and I'll ask you second some Kevins to put your question. You were late. So we'll go back to Waitaki boys. A question from you lads?
What is your guys' party vision for the youth of this country? How do you see us playing a part now in the development of our country?
Well, we will take the order, as I said, starting with Sue and working down, and for the next question we'll start with Hessel and so on. Sue.
Well, I guess there's a lot of different things I could say, but maybe the best one, since you guys are high school students looking at coming out into tertiary education pretty soon, or training, the best place to focus is maybe thinking about our plan for supporting people to get the education when they come out of school. And when I was your age, I could go to university for free, study for free. I had a free universal allowance for students, and then now that I'm this age, I can pay that back in tax. So I'm happy to have a higher tax rate at this end of my life so that I can have a free education at the beginning. And what the Greens want to see is kids be able to come out and go into trades training without a big bill from their ITO. Although we want to see kids coming out with a universal study allowance so that kids don't have to work really hard part-time or pay back a big loan for your living costs when you get out of tertiary education. That would apply to people going through trades training as well as polytechs and university. So it would apply to everyone, not just people in academics. So the way that we would like to see things is to see that kids come out of school, they have the chance to study what they're good at and to develop their skills, to go into the workforce without a massive loan or a big bill. But that bill would be paid off maybe later in their life when they're more comfortable or on a higher income and able to afford it. Kia ora.
Firstly, I'd like to say that you guys are the future after replacing some of us, and so it's important that we do things to foster your graduation, your way of life. Two things that I would add is that, one, I'd say challenge the status quo, challenge the media, because you get fed a lot of stuff that's really one-sided. Check out what things, especially regarding economics, policies, things that are happening. The next thing is that one of our policies would be part of our economic policy would be far more money available, and we would want to abolish student loans make free education right up to tertiary level. Thanks.
The Conservative Party's really focused on ensuring that we have a strong economy, but we do see a mismatch through that transition from secondary school, be it into university or trades. And so we're looking to improve targeted assistance, and I mean government assistance, in those areas where we have skills shortages. So what we want to try and ensure that happens is that people don't leave secondary, for example, and go into an area of training that isn't going to end up in a good prospect of getting into work. So we want to incentivise those areas where there are shortages and give greater support to those areas. In terms of student loans and everything, no, we won't be wiping student loans, but I guess the message from us is that we're looking at a targeted assistance.
The saying is it goes something like, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And so for young people, I want you guys to have the best life. I want you to be hugely ambitious. I want you to have all the choices in the world and all the opportunities to pursue those things which excite you. And to do that, you need to have a strong family. You need to have a caring society. You need to be in good health. You need to have had an excellent education with plenty of choices in there. And you have to have an attitude of giving and an attitude of hope and what can I do next in my life. You won't get that on benefit. So that is why we are putting such a strong focus in getting people off benefits and into work. We don't want to see our young people having lives devoid of hope and ambition. We want you to be the best you can be And I don't care if that's a builder, like my son, or an engineer, like my other son, or a student, like our daughter. You can be whatever you want to be. Go overseas, by all means. Please do. Be part of the global economy. But for goodness sake, come back and make a contribution to New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for your question. It's a really good one. Labour would like to see full participation of all of our people into society in New Zealand. So that means that across the board, from when you started learning in your early childhood education years right through to when you go to a tertiary institute, we would particularly like to see you engage in the political landscape, because we think it's really important that people are part of a democracy and that you learn how to participate at an early age. We'd like to see that you have the best possible chance while you're at school by having smaller class sizes, and certainly we are looking to introduce 2,000 extra teachers to make sure that happens. We also want to look at how currently people are on the unemployment benefit, that would be changed into a subsidy for employers to employ people to come and work for them, so they would get the money that people would be normally paid into unemployment, into helping to create jobs for young people. We also want to review completely the way in which the student allowance system is set up. I've got two adult daughters so far that have already got huge student loans that they're now having to pay off alongside a mortgage. So we want to see that that's not the kind of situation that you'll find yourselves in, but essentially we want to see you as absolutely contributing part to our society.
Thanks very much. We welcome St Kevin's. Have you got a question ready?
Yes, we do. Well, I've lived in Oamaru for the last 2 years, and prior to that I lived in Monaco. I found that a lot of my, people my age, including my friends, have been impacted by drugs and alcohol. So I was wondering about, why we have alcohol advertisements on television, and what kind of systems that the government has to help support those who have been affected by drugs and alcohol.
Subject. I've been to a few local alcohol policy meetings at Cromwell, the council, and I found it really interesting that the council didn't think it was a problem with alcohol, and it wasn't until the medical officer of health got up and really got stuck into them, and they didn't like it, and he told them what the problems were with alcohol. One of the police officers I mentioned the other day said to me in Cromwell, if we didn't have an alcohol problem, we could halve the police force. And I find it really interesting that the government's devolved a lot of this policy down to council level, but the councils don't really want to deal with it. And I don't know if any of you watched the documentary by documentary a few weeks ago on alcohol, and that most of the alcohol companies in New Zealand are owned by overseas companies, and so they have huge control of what happens. And if we continue down this path, we may not have any say in how much profit they make in the advertising, because we will impinge on their profits and they could take the country to court. So we need to be very well aware, and I think we need far more better education in schools and really hit home the problems with alcohol abuse.
Yes, thank you for that question. It's a subject that the Conservatives have talked about quite a lot. The Conservatives are very strong on traditional family values. We see alcohol in society causing a lot of harm. It breaks up families. It puts people in situations where they don't know where to turn. And because of the addictive nature of alcohol, it's a really slippery slope. So, for example, one of our policies is that, particularly in the case of drink driving, 3 strikes and your vehicle is sold on your bike. So we're taking a pretty tough line with regard to repeat offences with regard to alcohol. Drugs, we've got no time for some of the highs that are sold, and we'd like to see the permanent removal of those so-called legal highs, and certainly government have taken steps in that area, but alcohol is a major issue for us. Thank you.
great question. I started my political career in national politics campaigning very strongly against BZP party pills, and I'm so pleased to see that we have finally got some decent legislation which has got them off the shelves. Unfortunately, in that time, a market has developed for recreational drugs, and I continue to do everything I can to keep those drugs out of the hands of our young people. I will never accept the decriminalisation of marijuana, and perhaps that's a question you could ask some of the other candidates, their stand on that. That is something I feel particularly strongly about. The Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act, which we amended last year, has put more control into communities' hands, and a previous candidate talked about an Alexandra community that didn't care. I don't believe that, actually. I think that communities do care about the sale and supply of alcohol, and part of the legislative changes we made it harder for younger people to get alcohol, harder for licences to be obtained, easier for liquor licences to be taken away. We put in a provision where if people your age are now starting to go out and socialise, so we cannot have a situation now where the parent of a young person can supply alcohol to other young people without the parent's permission. Now, of course you can get around that, of course you can, people are going to get around anything, but we are sending the strongest message that we can that alcohol is part of our society, always has been. We can question whether if it were to be introduced now, would we introduce it knowing what we know about it? I don't know if we would. But we are making many, many moves to make the sale and supply of alcohol as restricted as we possibly can, with a very strong focus on the harm. I want to congratulate you for your leadership, you young people, in these issues. I think your voice is very strong. Long may it continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a good question, and I think the question you started with was in regards to the advertising of alcohol, and you will know that Labor has taken a strong stance on, particularly on the, plain clothes, plain packaging for tobacco and alcohol, and making sure that they're not invisible places so that people can see them. So it is about restricting the display and the supply of alcohol. We think, it needs to be safe, it needs to be protected, and also then on the other side of it, when we talk about people that do access alcohol and become addicted to it, we see that as a health issue, and we see that we need to do a whole lot of things around making sure that we treat it as a health issue and we treat the addiction, because that, as we know, is one of the issues that does have a fundamental impact on a whole range of issues for families, for young people in terms of their potential. So we would be making sure that we treat it as a health issue and we look at the addiction and treatment aspect of it. We would also be looking to implement the Law Commission recommendations on the supply and sale of alcohol.
The way that the Green Party looks at alcohol and other drugs is that we want to reduce the amount of harm in society overall from, any kind of use of those substances. We recognise that not all use of alcohol or tobacco or other drugs is actually abuse, and so we do want to see them carry on being used in society, but it's really important to us that the bad and the harmful effects of those substances is reduced. So there's quite a few different strategies we've got for dealing with that. Now, while we, like Lisa was saying, education is a big part of it, and we want people to be aware of the issues around, what the health impacts could be of using alcohol and other drugs. But we recognise that the power of advertising industry is so huge that we really need to put some limits around the sorts of information that can be shared through advertising and marketing. We would separate alcohol in supermarkets from the other foods, so you don't have to walk past the alcohol section in order to get to the dairy foods or any other part, so that it's a completely different section. And we would also have a minimum price, so you couldn't sell super cheap drinks to kids or anybody else on low income. And we would maintain the age, the drinking age at 18, but we would support that with really strong enforcement so that younger kids didn't have access to alcohol.
now we're looking at Jeff's bonsai trees, and I'm fascinated with all of the ones he has here, and so I'm going to ask him to do a little bit of what the preparation for keeping them looking beautiful. So Jeff, it's over to you.
Thank you. I didn't know I was interested in bonsai till Jan and I went to China a few years ago, and when we went to a mosque or a temple or wherever, if there was bonsais in the corner, Jan noticed that I shuffled over there, and when we came home she saw a bonsai course advertised in Dunedin, so she got that for me for my birthday, and I still didn't know I was interested in bonsais, and right up till the day before the course started I thought that probably Jan was going to go, really, but anyway she didn't, and I did, and I had 2 great days. And
was in Dunedin or
yes, Joy Morton is a great promoter of all things bonsai, and so after my 2-day course, and I did a couple of bonsais, I came home and thought I needed to learn some more, so I've done 2 more 1-week courses with the same lady in Dunedin, and I've done about 60, and I'll back up a wee bit. Bonsai means tree in a pot, and the Chinese started it because they just have a little courtyard probably shared by several families, and for them to have a tree they've got to have it in a pot, and if they can keep it small, well then they can have several, and you'll see I've got about 60 here just in a sort of a small courtyard. So that's why it was developed, and there's all sorts of styles, from formals to cascading to distressed look and windswept, and this one here, Helen, that I'll just reach it across, that's one tree, it's called a raft style, and it was a tree like this, and I planted it sideways and just trained the branches up.
So these are chopped off later, are they?
No, that's just it. So that looks like I've got about 8 trees, but it all just started out of one, so that's a raft.
So is there still a root system that's independent of each one, or belongs to the same one?
That probably has now got feeder roots off to one side.
Right.
But it started off just with the one base root.
Yes. And how do you decide what type of tree you're going to have?
Well, you can pretty much bonsai anything. There's the odd native that dies when you yank at it and cut it about, but most things, like this is just a macrocarpa, because it's in a pot, you've got to keep it small. That one's too big already, we just nick 8 inches off it, we'll thin it out a wee bit, and once every couple of years you've got to pull it out of the pot, see how that's starting to get root bound.
Yes.
You very carefully get a delicate saw and just cut the old off.
Yes.
And with potting mix, when you lift the lid you don't breathe in, because you could develop Legionnaire's disease from that. And we'll give it a wee bit of fresh potting mix, and that's got a wee bit of fertiliser in it. And settle that in there. But I'll thin that prune that a wee bit more, and then I'll submerge it in water for about 20 minutes, and that'll really settle the new soil and the old soil. So it's as simple as that.
So now you've got 4 there. Where they have got independent rooting systems.
Yes, they do.
That now seems to have, as you said, become root bound.
Yep.
But they're all at different stages of growing, have you controlled that by your pruning?
By pruning, you tend to have the short one at the front and the tall ones at the back. That's how you look into a forest.
Yes.
Well, not necessarily, but they're all different sizes just to make it interesting.
Now you just clip the top off that one. Do you prune branches out from time to time, or because you're controlling the light and everything else, you could move them around to have whatever number of branches you want to?
Yeah, generally the less branches the better. You'll see this cascading one here. I've thinned it out a lot so that the trunk's quite part of the character, really.
And what diseases, if any, do you get?
Oh, they get everything that any other tree. Sometimes they get green flies.
Yes.
Some of them get lichen.
Yes.
So we just got to treat them like anything else.
Well, I noticed as I came in too, you pruned the roses, and do you have a similar system for pruning these so that it's to an outside growing branch or bud?
No, we just keep it small. There's no rhyme or reason. It's a bit like a haircut. If you thin it a bit much one day, well, in a couple of 3 months later, it's all good again anyway.
Right.
And because they're trees, you can leave them outside. They're not inside plants at all. No. They're better out in the sun. If it snows, they get snow on them. Whatever, it makes no difference. The only thing you've got to do is water them, because I've got such a small reservoir that I've got to, for 8 months of the year, you've got to water them every day.
Yes.
And it only takes about 10 minutes to water about 60. I could rig up an irrigation system that was automatic, but little ones only need a little water and big ones need a bigger bit of water, and it doesn't hurt to monitor them and see if they've got green fly or something else, whereas it was all automated then.
Okay, well, we'll have a look at some of the others, so we'll move around and look there now. Now, kotai, well, only we knew them as coized.
Yes.
So which sort is this one?
No, not sure what type. This is another raft style.
Yeah.
I just planted one tree and I pulled its branches down into the ground. So now it looks like there's about 8 or 10 trees there, and those ones that are in the ground have taken root. So it was just one tree to start with, and it's a bit of a favourite. I like things that flower, and it flowers twice a year.
Do you get wet size coming?
Yep.
Good. And so now, how long did that take to happen?
Oh, it's quite aggressive. It's probably only 4 years old.
Right.
And I've probably got to trim it twice a year, whereas a metricarpa, it might go 2 or 3 years before you've got to trim it up.
Okay. And I mean, they do grow very quickly, but can you be really ruthless and pull them all down, or that you're just making your decisions as you go along, or am I asking the wrong question?
No.
How do you make a decision on what you're going to do with the plant sitting in front of you?
Well, that was big enough and had about 10 branches.
Yes.
That just made it possible to do that. If it had one trunk, well, then I can't make it into that sort of raft style. So it lent itself to it.
Right. Okay, and what have we got here?
Well, it's just a little bit different by nature. It's a split trunk, and that's a little unusual. You don't generally wander into a forest and find something with a split trunk. So seeing it was, I left it like that, and I see it's got some mould on the inside.
Well, I've got a plum tree that's done that, and every year I think, my goodness, it's going to die. But it seems to keep going, so it must be the climate as well.
Yes.
I mean,
it might have just got a bit damp over winter. When I've got the gone in 60 seconds out, I'll give it a squirt. That'll sort that out.
Right. These has gone brown on the top.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's that healthy. I might need to repot it and give it some fertiliser. I might even make it a bit smaller.
Right, and then you've got a whole lot up here that you've got on display. Do you want to come and name them? You said you've got about 60 altogether here. So how long have you been doing it for?
About 4 years. Because aging bonsai trees makes them better. So I didn't want to do 2 each year. I did about 60 in 2 years.
I see.
And now they can get some growth and some size and things about them.
Right.
These azaleas, they're a favourite of mine, and you can see big fat buds.
Yes.
They will blossom very shortly, and as they blossom I put them round at the back door, and when they stop blossoming they get put to the back row again. So there's quite a few there. The maples, they're bright red maples. Yes. So they look magnificent for several months. I've done some different styles. It doesn't mean I like them all. It just meant when I went to different courses I learned how to do all sorts.
Well, tell me what you're learning how to do. For example, those top two just to the left of you. One's got a very wide trunk, I'd have called it, on a very peculiar angle, and some new growth coming out, both from the foot of the tree and the top, whereas the other has got a myriad of branches and one central trunk. So what is really the difference?
Right, this one here is a weeping kauai,
Right.
and it's just 5 years old. This is a 70-year-old hedge plant. Someone was pulling out a hedge,
Yes.
so I stopped and got that
Ah.
gnarly old bit of root.
I wondered, because you're not old enough to
No.
have been around for the 70 years.
No, and it needs a bit more of a trim up like me. But anyway, we can leave that till
That would
Monday.
be it would be a bold person who embarked on trimming your,
Yes.
your locks, I would think.
It would.
Yeah, keep going.
So anyway, just round here we've got different ones. We've got a couple of big cascading ones there. We've got one growing out of some a rock, a lava rock from down Dunedin way, and we've got quite a big group planting there. So they're all just different.
For the one out of that lava rock,
Yep.
you still lever it out and put in some new compost.
Yes.
And it's ordinary compost?
Yep. You don't want barky compost, because then as you water it, the bark floats out.
Yes.
So there's some compost that are a bit better, but you soon work that out.
Right. And what are you going to do with this one?
This is a copper beech,
Right.
and it does lose its leaves, and probably Labour weekend it'll spring out in a blood red leaf. It's quite majestic.
And that actually, if we lift that one up to just show the way in which the roots have come out, what happens if it's there? That is beautiful,
Yes.
because you can see light through.
Just a different style, exposed
Yeah.
roots.
Well, how much of the root do you have to leave in soil or in compost as against having it out? Does that relate to the size or the age of the full tree?
No, the less soil you have for a bigger tree just means you've got to fertilise it and water it more often.
Right. What are you using for fertiliser?
Mostly a seaweed-based one that I water in.
Right. Do you go down for your own seaweed?
Nope, might attend.
I see. Okay, well, we'll go and see the 50-year-old
Yes.
one, which might have been around when you were a kid.
It just about could have been.
So, of the pine family, which one?
This is a black pine. This is the only one I bought, and it's coming 50 years old. It was planted in 1967.
Right.
I wanted one established tree, so people could see what age does to them. So there's probably my smallest little azalea, and it's been flowering for about a month, and this is my biggest, and it won't ever get any bigger. I'll just keep pruning the new growth out, so it'll stay that size. The trunk will continue to get a little bigger.
Yes.
But yeah, that's nearly 50 years old.
So do you have to put a larger pot or container every so often?
No, in fact, when you first pot a tree, you put it in a bigger pot,
Yes.
and then as it develops feeder roots, you can put it in a smaller pot, and a smaller pot each time you replant it.
Right, and because you're trimming the roots at
Yes.
the same time. So far as, again, you've got this mix of those above ground and those below ground, so every so often you must be pruning some of these bigger ones, or is that again a preference for what you want to see it?
It doesn't grow any more, they just get a bit thicker.
Right.
It's only the feeder roots underneath,
Right.
and I repotted that last year, and in 2 years it had grown a real mat that was getting quite root bound, and sometimes you can tell they start rising up out of the pot.
Oh.
And it gets harder to water them because the water just runs off instead of running in. So you can tell when they're starting to get root bound.
I just wonder, I mean, do you not have to almost put in a fork or something like that to let the water in at any level?
Only if the soil got too dry,
Yes.
then you would have trouble watering it, the water runs off.
Right.
But then I've got a bit of a bath, and I fill it up with water, and I just submerge the thing in it for 20 minutes, and that sorts that out.
I should think you go back to the old concrete tubs.
Yes,
you used.
that would do it.
Right. Now, just as a by the way, we can see, and Ross perhaps could come up closer later to see where you've pruned these off, but where are you going to prune and what time of the year are you pruning, or you're doing it
I
regularly?
I do it when I remember.
Yes.
There's weed shoots in here that I could peel off now.
Right.
And if I forget, they get a couple inches long, and then you do it then. It doesn't matter a lot.
Right. So it's become a passion, a hobby, and a relax?
Yes. Yeah, it's quite surprising. On a Sunday afternoon, I rig myself up with a table and some potting mix, and the radio's on and the sun's on my back, and yeah, I enjoy it, and I would never have thought I would, but it's obviously different from everything else I do, and yes, we enjoy it.
Well, and it definitely is interesting to just even understand the world where each tree has come from, and then your experience of it, because when you have a very large tree and okay, to go out and do pruning, it is a massive task, whereas, as you say, you're doing this on a Sunday afternoon.
Yes,
wonderful.
One thing that does surprise me is my gardening was planting out silver beet or lettuce or cabbage, and it didn't matter how careful you were and how you watered them, they still wilted. Whereas a tree, you yank it out of the forest and you cut it up with a saw and you plonk it in a pot, and they don't look back.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Well, we've loved it. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for letting us have a look.
Thank you, Helen and Ross.
And now you can enjoy North School items. Malo lele, everybody. This is our North School group. It's a combined multicultural group that will with the students from the school, and would like to sing 2 Tongan songs for you. The first one that we will sing, and the second one the kids asked to sing this song. So I hope you enjoy it.
singing for us and some action songs as well. I think that song's going to be stuck in our head all day now. So can everybody join me in thanking Oamaru New Zealand and Kevin to leave us?
Welcome back. I trust you enjoyed this evening's programs. Thank you for watching 45 South. If you'd like to get in touch, you can contact us on 027 45 South. That's 027 45 76 884. You can come see us. Our office is at 17 Itchen Street. Don't forget to like our Facebook page, and if you have any comments or suggestions, feel free to drop us a line. Hope you have a great evening. Thanks for watching.